This is Donald Parham. You're listening to Chargers Unleashed, part of the LAFB Network. Stay jiggy.
Hey, this is Chris from the second, Chargers outside linebacker. Make sure you check out Chargers Unleashed. Guys, the Chargers Unleashed, Sebastian Joseph, they know the vibes. We outside.
You checking in with Mike Williams from the LA Chargers, and you're tuning into the Chargers Unleashed.
You're listening to the Chargers Unleashed podcast with your host, Dan Wolkenstein and Jake Hefner.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LAFB Network. Today's show, of course, is being brought to you by BetOnline, Charger, Bolt Family, and Rock Solid Sports Memorabilia. If this is your first time tuning into the show, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Dan Wolkenstein, day 3. Technically the official beginning of free agent frenzy, but we all know that these conversations started happening 48 hours ago. So a lot of these things were already in the books. You and I were going through the last 2 days, obviously a lot of Chargers news to cover. I want to formally apologize to everyone who was watching yesterday as far as the scheduling conflict on my part. Dan and I had a couple of days where as soon as we were done recording, we were like, okay, got to start up another one, because at that very moment, some Charger news would just break. And surely enough, we said to ourselves, you know what? Let's just wait on this one. Let's just see what happens. And of course, there was some breaking news later on this afternoon that we will get into. But day 3, lots of Chargers news to talk about as it relates to free agency. Who's been signed? Who's still out there that the Chargers possibly could target? Other player news that we need to cover. But obviously what we wanted to do to cover these first 3 days of free agency is that we know we've already talked a lot about the Austin Ekeler signings, the Trey Pipkins signings, but we want to start getting some of the feedback from everyone else that's out there. Tell us what your favorite signing is thus far. Tell us who you believe that the Chargers should go out and pursue. Hell, let's even start talking some draft. Who cares? This is just an open forum. That's what this show's about. But it's a good time when it's this time of the year for free agency. But Dan Wolkenstein, before we kick it off, my friend, how are you, sir? How are you feeling?
I am great. At least that's what the Fox said. I will say, slip of the tongue for you. Austin Ekeler has not signed yet. I think you meant Trey Pipkins and Morgan Fox for the re-signings.
Apologies.
But honestly,
I was talking about the Austin Ekeler contract situation.
Contract. There we go.
Yes.
There we go.
Thank you for getting
I didn't
me
want
there.
folks getting crazy. I knew what you meant, so I just wanted to make sure that it was out there. No, I'm feeling great. I'm glad that we just said, you know what? Let's pump the brakes on going live until after. Let the dust settle a little bit, considering West Coast, Best Coast, we're waiting a few hours past most people before we actually put out some of the signings. Right around 5 o'clock today, we saw a very own Morgan Fox get re-signed. 2-year deal for the Chargers. We don't know the specifics, but they got it done. That's what matters. Obviously, we'll talk about that. Obviously, we'll talk about the latest with the Austin Ekeler situation, which is not looking great for his pocketbooks at this point and trade options, considering the market out there. And also possible options for the Chargers at both in free agency as well as, like Jake said, in the draft. For folks who are tuning in live, hello. Welcome to Chargers Unleashed. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe if you can. Please take 5 seconds while I'm yapping to do this. Additionally, leave us a comment. Leave us a question. Question for you out there. Who would you like the Chargers to re-sign in free agency next? What is the next move you'd like the Chargers to do? Jake, over, under? Quick question for you. Over, under. 1.5 free agents the Chargers sign tomorrow.
Well, we still have one that we know of as far as the Chargers being interested in. Would this include their own free agents?
No. Outside.
Then I'll say under. I will say under on that one. But to transition before we get started on all the conversation, I want to remind everybody that BetOnline remains your fastest and easiest way that you'll always find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends over at BetOnline. And as your continued source for all sports wagering information, BetOnline features live betting, free contests, and giveaway all season long. Head on over to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. And make sure to use that promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your rewards. BetOnline, where the game starts.
So, Jake, I'm back. Hopefully not frozen.
Man, you've had 3 days of technical difficulties, my friend. I don't know what is going on with you. I think your computer hates you for the fact that you took that long vacation in Maui, and this is the price that you're paying for it right now.
Yep. Hey, maybe the computer hates me, but also maybe it's a good luck charm for the Chargers, because every time we've had technical issues, we've seen a Chargers re-sign somebody or sign someone. So, where do we start? So, folks, in the comments, we got tons of people out here saying hi. Lots of guesses out here. Folks are already requesting they'd like to see Kyle Van Noy back, J.K. Scott back, Bryce Callahan back. Folks are already asking for Bijan Robinson in the draft again. Jorge Rodriguez, I agree. Let's put him up there. Late night with Hefner and Wolkenstein, coming to you live from Chargers Unleashed. Here we are. Chris asks for Fehoko, J.K. Scott, and if possible, Kyle Van Noy. And Chef Torres 24, Drew Tranquil, Kyle Van Noy, Bryce Callahan, and Vato, although Vato's not a free agent. He's currently on the team, playing it this year. No worries there. And Fehoko, last one. Jake, so they did it. You and I were talking earlier today. There was not a chance in hell that we thought that the Chargers were going to be able to sign Morgan Fox purely because of the bag that he deserved. We didn't think the Chargers could pay it. And what did he deserve? You saw his coach come out there earlier today saying he deserved $8 to $10 million per. And I don't know if he's wrong. Like, the market might dictate that. The market might say that. No, Morgan Fox is a very specific situation in the Brandon Staley mold. But I highly doubt he got $8 to $10 million. But somehow the Chargers found a way to bring in Morgan Fox, who had a career year with the Chargers, 6.5 sacks, one of your best interior presence last year, stays with the Chargers 2 years. Defensive line, at least starter-wise, is basically intact. What do you think?
I mean, it was such an important signing that they had to bring Morgan Fox back. Now that we obviously had the news that they're letting Brandon Fehoko test the open market, Jerry Tillery's gone. You still have Austin Johnson, Tito Agbanigba, and Christian Covington coming back from injuries. So there had to be some way that you could figure out how to do this. And yeah, at first, it may have seemed that Morgan Fox had priced himself out of the market with the year that he had. But what he gave you to that defensive line, especially when it came to interior pressure, which is not the easiest thing to find out there on the open market for guys that can do it consistently and do it well. This was a great get by the Chargers as far as bringing him back. I'm not sure what the deal is. You know what Ed McGuire usually does with some of these deals and what him and Tom Telesco are able to pull off when they put their heads together. So a 2-year deal, I'm still even looking on here just to see if there has been any updates as far as the financial numbers goes, but I have not seen them. If someone happens to beat me to that, go ahead and throw it in the chat and let us know. But Dan, this was vital. It really was, because if you were saying to yourself, okay, that we were about to go into this draft season with Sebastian Joseph Day being your only healthy interior defensive lineman, you may have had to have kicked that priority of interior defensive line as far as draft needs goes a lot higher than probably what you would expect to be investing in it just over 5.5 weeks from now. But no, Morgan Fox proved his worth. I'm still interested in seeing the numbers. I think that, he deserved a decent contract, especially what was been given out in the last 48 hours to interior defensive linemen out there.
Yeah.
And I think he's a versatile piece. I mean, he brings a lot to the table. He really does. He is a chess piece on that defense. And you saw how Brandon Staley deployed him, and it really, really worked for this team. So it was a vital piece as far as generating pressure, especially when Joey Bosa was out last year. Definitely was a great replacement for Jerry Tillery when he ultimately ended up getting cut. And really, when three of your interior defensive linemen went down, he stepped up in the biggest possible way. So The Chargers absolutely had to do this because if they were not able to pull this one off, it'd have been difficult to see as far as free agency goes who you would have been able to find that would at least replicate that type of versatility and the numbers that he put up.
Let's have a little bit of
price.
Yeah, let's have a little fun here for 20 seconds. Jorge Rodriguez talked about it. Raiders signed Jerry Tillery. Chargers signed Morgan Fox. It's a good day to be a Chargers fan. Jake, I know this might be a low blow. Raiders fans are having a tough week, man. They go from
when you have the Raiders fan base just saying collectively, I don't know what we're doing right now.
Welp.
I mean, just a bunch of shrug emojis. I feel for him, man.
It says a lot that we feel for them.
Our divisional rivals, but really, I feel for them. And then on top of that, to hear the Aaron Rodgers interview on Pat McAfee today, where even Aaron Rodgers admits, like, yeah, I really wanted to go to the Raiders. It's just like, man, just pile the sand on, man. I mean,
Darren Waller gone,
oof.
Jimmy Garoppolo in, Derek Carr gone, Jerry Tillery in, Aaron Rodgers could have been in there, not so much. Josh Jacobs isn't happy. Like, woo, that's tough.
They made the play for the number 1 overall pick to try to get a quarterback, and that didn't end up coming to fruition. I mean.
Yep.
I thought there was. I mean, there's 3 strikes in baseball, but apparently there's a hell of a lot more when it comes to the Raiders offseason.
Jeez, man. So Chris comes up with a good point, and I was actually going to be talking about this next. Jake, Chris says, can we just take a moment and kind of appreciate that Tom Telesco is actually doing pretty good so far? It's a nice surprise, to be honest. This is the part that I think folks need to understand. And I know that there's a subset of Chargers fans out there, yes, I'm looking at you, that will never be happy, regardless of what the Chargers do.
Well, that's a fact.
In my opinion, the Chargers' top 3 priorities this offseason for internal free agent re-signings: Trey Pipkins, Morgan Fox, Drew Tranquill. So far, they're 2 for 2. Drew Tranquill, TBD. Clearly, the linebacker market is not what we thought it was. You saw Levante David get $7 million, so I don't think Drew Tranquill is going to get that. You saw the front office kind of play hardball with Austin Ekeler. Austin Ekeler is granted permission to go seek a trade. You're seeing running back deals go out now. Where what was Miles Sanders? Was it 6? I think it was like 6.25 a year. For 4 years?
Yeah, 4-year deal for $25 million. Yeah.
No. Like, Austin Ekeler and his agent, I guarantee you, are not happy right now. And the Chargers are in the driver's seat. They have the leverage. There's nothing, like, Ekeler is not going to get what he wants. The Chargers are letting Parham go test free agency. They're letting Fehoko go test free agency. Like, they're letting the guys go. They figured out what they thought the market was going to look like, and so far, they've been dead on. They have been dead on. And so, yes, take a moment and appreciate the fact that the Chargers have done a great job so far, given the cap situation. Again, remember the restructuring that went on. Given the free agents that needed to come back. The Jerry Tillery. The Trey Pipkins one on offense, I think, is just as important as the Morgan Fox one on defense. They're both huge. And say what you will about Morgan Fox and how much he's going to get paid, whatever. The fact that the Chargers defense is going to be able to have continued continuity with this roster, I think, is huge. I think that's when Morgan Fox comes in. I think that's probably the biggest advantage for me is it's not another year and a half for somebody to come and figure this out. Like, he's already good, Yeah,
it has been a hell of a job by Tom Telesco thus far. And like you said, Dan, yeah, not everybody's going to be happy because anytime that you see an outside free agent get released or any big name player that's out there, everybody's like, Chargers, go sign him, do something. Apparently they just have this mindset that there is no salary cap in football. And I know it can be manipulated in every which way possible, but you can't afford everybody. You can't afford these high priced players. Hell, the report that we heard today about the Chargers being interested in tight end Dalton Schultz, and everybody was making connections because of the Kellen Moore coordinator during his time in Dallas now, and even he's getting priced out because apparently his market was around the 12 to 13 million per year projection.
No way.
And obviously, I'm not sure what team is going to give him that. Obviously, it doesn't seem like any team will, but the Chargers wouldn't even be able to afford that if that indeed was what the market was for him. So roughly right now, and again, pending what the numbers have come through for Morgan Fox, the Chargers will probably have, I don't know, I'm guessing probably roughly about $7 million of spending space left. Now you have to equate that you still need to pay your draft picks for this upcoming year. So there are still some players that could be released. Obviously, everybody's kind of still waiting for the Dustin Hopkins release to take place to create that type of room. Whether or not Austin Ekeler ends up returning to this team, that is about a $6.5 million in cap space fluctuation that could take place.
Yep.
So things can still be done, but the Chargers do not have all the spending space in the world. And really what the most important thing for them was, outside of getting those restructures done, and there were a hell of a lot more restructures done than we originally thought they were going to do, that their most important things that they could do this year in free agency was sign some of their big impact players that they had to bring back. This is not the spending spree that the Chargers were able to go on last year and go out and get everybody that they could. The Drew Tranquils, the Trey Pipkins, the Morgan Foxes, they were important. And thankfully, you've at least brought back 2 out of the 3 of those. And that was the priority in this offseason. So if Tom Telesco is indeed, by all indications, going for that all-in season, he's doing what he can to at least make that an effort.
Yeah. And again, this is without some possible additional restructures that could possibly happen. And look, if the Chargers wanted to go get Dalton Schultz, they can get Dalton Schultz. Period. They can make it happen. There's no question about it. Like if they prioritize him,
his contract number would probably have to come down to about $3 or $4 million a year.
It will have to come down $3 or $4 million, not $3 or $4 million. But if the Chargers can decide, I want Dalton Schultz, and I will get rid of Gerald Everett. I'll eat the $4 million cap that I have to take, save $4 million roughly, and then, put, whether it's a signing bonus, whatever it is, and have like a $5 million cap hit. Like, they could do that. Will they? Should they? I don't know. But the likelihood is still there. And so for everyone saying they can't do it, they don't have money. Like, you just saw the Chiefs go out and get crazy this offseason already, and look what they're doing. They got Mahomes restructuring again.
Speaking of going crazy, if you want to make another comparison as far as everybody with the Trey Pipkins news yesterday, and when you saw the 3-year, what was that, $7.5 million that he got, Dan, or $7 million? Justin, Bengals just signed Orlando Brown. 4 years, $64 million.
Good Lord.
That includes a $31 million signing bonus. Now, obviously, it's different between a left tackle and a right tackle, but wow.
How much?
4 years, $64 million. $31 million in signing bonus.
Whoa. Literally, Trey Pipkins is, I think, less than half of that.
Yeah.
So, value. You can call Coupon Tom however you want. Like, I'm glad he's our GM right now, because if he wasn't, I don't think that we'd be in the spot that we are, where we can have all these players. So look at kind of the big picture. Okay. The Chargers have the entire offseason ahead of them. They have the draft to shore up the holes they have. There was a question in here. I don't know if I could find it here quickly, but there was a question asking, what are the Chargers going to do to fix the run game, or to stop the run on defense? Valid question, Steve, by the way. Good news. They have a ton of time to figure that out. And honestly, damn well that is one of the things that is probably keeping Brandon Staley up at night every night. Because the idea of his defensive scheme is to allow rushes of, 2-3 yards a clip. That's fine, but not to give up the big one. And that's what plagued this Chargers defense almost the entire year. You saw a stretch of 4, 5, 6 games in a row in the middle part of the season. They gave up 40, 50, 60 yard chunk plays on runs. That's what can't happen. And so Whether that's through the draft, whether maybe they can get a Kyle Van Noy on the cheap again, who knows? This offseason's been weird so far with what the ceiling and floors are and what they thought they would be. There's still time. And so for them to be able to have that front five locked already with only the improvement possibilities, like, you take that. Jake, I don't know if you saw this. There was a question that came in about everyone talks about the eye emojis. We saw it happen last year with Derwin James with the eye emojis. Derwin posted eye emojis. Bolt Maniac asked, Dan, Derwin James posted eye emojis earlier. Any insight? Heard something about Dalvin Cook too. Jake. So there are two things here since he asked me. One, the Dalvin Cook one, I think that's just a Florida State connection. Jake had to kind of talk me off the cliff there. I'll give him credit for that. Eye emojis today, I think something's happening. Jake, do you think something's happening based on those? Derwin's not stupid. I don't think Derwin's out there trolling people. I really don't.
No, but at the time when he dropped those emojis, that was just after, if I remember correctly, that was just after the news of Darius Slay and Ezekiel Elliott and what was happening with them, that they were not going to be with the Chargers and the Eagles any longer. So he dropped it shortly after that. And obviously that's big news for the NFC East. That's big news all the way around. And just in general, free agency news. So I think he was basically just saying, hey, a lot's going on. I think that's what it was. I really do. But look, the one person to blame / give a pat on the back for is Sebastian Joseph Day.
Yes.
Because he's just got to be sitting back at home just loving this. Because anytime that he even tweets anything, it could be a random assortment of emojis. Yep. People will go bonkers over it.
But when he gets specific, it gets even more. And today, I'm not paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me, but I believe his tweet said, "Give me John Johnson III."
Technically, he put it as JJIII. But okay, yes.
So is it what, like Justin Jefferson's son that isn't around yet? I don't know. No. John Johnson III, formerly from the Rams, formerly from the Browns, who was just released today, being recruited publicly by Sebastian Joseph Day, who is a presence. That's the one that I said. That's the guy I want on defense.
Look,
I don't know what the price tag will be.
Sebastian Joseph Day was kind of integral in recruiting Morgan Fox last year over to the team. So
and Sebastian Joseph Day has connections to
John
Johnson.
And nothing that I have seen publicly outside of the announcement that was made on Monday as far as the Chargers were going to be active in pursuing John Johnson when he became available.
Check.
I'm not sure what type of competition the Chargers have for him, but the Chargers have a need at the safety position because you don't know what you have yet with JT Woods. Obviously, Alohi Gilman filled in admirably for him. And obviously, Nasir Adderley is not coming back to this team next year. So in terms of putting somebody back there with Derwin James that you could help elevate this secondary, this is a player who had his best year under Brandon Staley with the Rams back in 2020. Had a little bit of a drop-off during this last year with the Cleveland Browns, but he does have some familiarity because the Chargers now obviously hired Jeff Howard as the linebackers coach, but still some familiarity there with the coaching staff. So if you're looking for someone who could you could take advantage of a down year in terms of cost goes, and when you put someone next to Derwin James, sometimes he can elevate some players, I think. So I think it would actually be a pretty good fit from a familiarity and a scheme and a personnel standpoint.
I don't know. John Johnson fits great. We've seen how good he can be, and we've seen kind of the chemistry of former players of Staley's. You look at Khalil Mack, you look at Bryce Callahan, you look at Sebastian Joseph Day, you look at Morgan Fox. Like, the list goes on. And John Johnson's another one. John Johnson, Derwin James, and Alohi Gilman as your kind of your trio safety tandem with Woods. What's his first name?
Whatever JT Woods brings.
JT Woods, yes, whatever he's going to be. That's a formidable safety group. JT Woods is a project. But those three, I'll take. I think John Johnson is an upgrade over Nasir Adderley. I'll say it. James Wagner brings up a good point. Eric Kendricks is a run-stop solution. One of the things that Eric Kendricks is better at than Drew Tranquill, I believe, is against the run. think that's something he is better at against the run and in coverage specifically. Those are the things in my eyes I see better. Now, again, maybe this is me throwing pie at a wall. Who knows? The Chargers still could get Drew Tranquill.
That's just you throwing pie at a wall.
Just because the market is going there, the Chargers did not deserve to get Morgan Fox back at what I think they're going to get him at. Like, he outplayed what he's going to be making. Now, if it's because he's an undrafted free agent guy, if it's because he got a hometown Staley discount, I don't know. Morgan Fox, like, what I guarantee you, when that contract comes out, Chargers fans, Tom Telesco is going to be having a cigar, and folks who are wanting, i.e., like the coach for the linebackers coach for Morgan Fox, not going to be happy.
Yeah, hang on, checking my notes. This is day 3 of me having to go back and have this little mini conversation with you. Would I love Drew Tranquill back on this roster? Absolutely. I personally considered him as the top free agent that you had to bring back.
$5 million. Do they do it?
Dan, do they even have that to spend? I even just explained how much they have currently right now. You still have to take into account the money that you have to pay for your draft picks. And oh, by the way, if you do sign John Johnson, that number is even smaller. So I'm not sure what market for Drew Tranquill that it would have to shrink to.
$2 million cap year, $6 million next year.
I mean, that would be Ed McGuire just being the absolute wizard. If you
would
could
you be surprised? That's what he does.
I would be surprised. Honestly, I'm not surprised by what he does. But if this situation was able to come about, I still just can't understand. And I know that the linebacker deals that have been doled out thus far, some have been really big, some have been fairly reasonable. But here's the thing. If the Chargers could have done the Kaiser White deal that Kaiser White did when he went back to the Philadelphia Eagles last year, I feel like they would have done it, and they would have even done better. So I don't see them, after paying Eric Kendricks what you're bringing in. And yes, you have Kenneth Murray, who has a lot to prove. I think that you roll into this season with those two as your starters. You invest in the linebacker position in the upcoming draft. And that's how the Chargers are going to move forward.
Lots of folks excited about the possibility of John Johnson. Chris says John Johnson was the green dot play caller under Staley with the Rams, so that's worth monitoring, which Drew Tranquill did a lot of that last year along with Derwin James.
I think it's actually going to go back to Eric Kendricks because the green dot with Staley has fluctuated. I know Derwin had the green dot at one point, but I think when Drew Tranquill had the green dot, I think he really liked that just overall for the defense. So I think and Kendricks wore the green dot when he was in Minnesota. So,
but imagine having 3 players on defense with that good of communication skills.
It's pretty damn good.
Like, that's not normal to have 3 guys who could potentially do the green dot. John Johnson, there's some stuff that people are talking about. Dan says John Johnson had one of his worst years last season. Perfect for the Chargers. Buy low. I will gladly buy low on that.
If you have not seen the movie Moneyball, just go back to the scene where he's talking about his scouts. And when they're talking about, well, I know, the Red Sox want to cut him and nobody wants to pick him up. And Brad Pitt immediately just says, that's good. He's cheap for us. So sometimes you take advantage of players that come off of a down year and sign them to a reasonable contract.
Julio says Chargers about to draft release players which don't count against the comp formula to get some additional picks next year. Jake, you know anything to hear about that?
Well, as far as Chargers about to draft release players which don't count against the comp formula. So the Eric Kendricks signing, and if they end up signing John Johnson, because those players were technically being released, they did not come to the end of their contract term.
Yes, release. I think it's what I mean. Yes, sign release.
Those players do not count against the compensatory pick formula. Yes.
Holla. Daniel Reed, we talked about a little bit earlier. Orlando Brown to Cincy. Yes. That contract makes the Trey Pipkins one look.
And Kansas City doing what Kansas City does, unfortunately, you could pretty much just already mark it in, they'll have 3 compensatory picks coming to them in 2024.
Lovely.
Lord.
Lovely. And aren't they getting, they're already getting something for Bieniemy leaving.
Well, no, because that technically it wasn't a promotion. So technically it's a lateral move. Because it was only.
But didn't he also get a somewhat? No, he did get a promotion. Didn't he get like assistant head coach or something?
Well, that's true. But I didn't hear anything that they were getting. I mean, because I do understand the formula.
I could be wrong.
I do understand the formula, but I don't remember them actually saying that Kansas City was going to be getting an additional picks for that.
Got it. Okay. Some other names. And again, folks who are tuning in, shout out all our Chargers fans worldwide. We have folks here from France, Germany. We got folks in the U.S., obviously West Coast, East Coast, everywhere. We do got to talk about the Austin Ekeler situation and what that means for the running back market, some possibilities the Chargers can get at running back. Before we do that, folks who are tuning in, if you have not already done so, please do us a favor while we're yapping 5 seconds. Hit the like, hit the subscribe button. We're shooting for 4,000. Let's see if we can get there of the subscribers. Jake, so movement today, which is interesting. We saw Austin Ekeler, the news the last couple days. And then today we saw running backs fly off the board. Miles Sanders, Jamal Williams. I know there's a few others. I don't think Eckler's happy right now. And I don't think he's going to be going anywhere.
Look, first off, this is definitely something I want to say because this has been all over Twitter the last couple of days. Anybody who is slandering Austin Ekeler, please stop.
Yeah, thank you.
Whether he is going to be with this team or not, please stop. Because put yourself in his shoes and think about if your position is so devalued. Now, normally this would not happen to the Chargers for a player like Austin Ekeler. And then literally the entire market goes against that player. And even for all the other players, when you see the likes of Miles Sanders and what he has done, and even when you look at those numbers, 4 years for $25 million.
Alexander Madison, 2 years up to $8 million.
Right. It just shows you how much, again, the running back market has shifted from the days of the Adrian Petersons. Even the Derrick Henrys is a dying breed of a contract. The LTs, back in that day when it used to be those powerhouse 3-down running backs that are just a dying breed, and now it's more of a running back by committee.
Jamal Williams, 3 years, $12 million, $4 million per year.
So first off, just, show a little bit more class, especially if you're a Chargers fan.
Yes, please.
To that. Secondly, we've been saying it the last 2 days, Dan. I understood both sides of what was taking place here. I would love to see Austin Ekeler remain with this team. He makes this offense better. And especially now with the way that the running back market, especially today, has basically picked up, and you've seen these running backs sign elsewhere. This is a bargain deal that, to Austin Eckler's credit, he is outplayed. He really has. It's thievery for the standpoint that you get that much production out of one player, and he's on your books for 4 years and $24 million. It's thievery. It really is. And I will say this: the deals that have been doled out today have definitely leveled the playing field for the market, because some of the deals that have been doled out now are even lower than what Austin Ekeler is getting. So
all of the deals so far are lower than what Austin Ekeler is getting this year, cap hit wise. Every single one of them.
Yep.
So if Ekeler just stays as is, he's getting more money than every single running back free agent so far this year.
Yes.
Again, Zeke is out there still, so we'll see what happens. But
yeah. So I get it. Austin Ekeler, at his age, you want to get paid one more time before you're 30. I totally get it. And based off of what he's done for this team, he deserves it. He really does. When you look what he's done statistically, he really does. So, but from a business standpoint for the Chargers and granting him the opportunity to go out and get a trade, I understand what they were doing when they made that decision as well.
Yep.
Because when you look at things, we already know that they have tried to renegotiate with him. Unfortunately, at that point in time, they weren't able to be on the same page. This might obviously change some things here in the next couple weeks or so. But even still, I understood it from a business perspective, from the Chargers standpoint. I understood it from Austin Ekeler's standpoint. And whether or not he returns back to this team or he ends up going elsewhere, he deserves all the respect in the world. And when the decision is ultimately made, and it's looking very much more likely that that would probably be the case based off of the deals that you've seen doled out over the last 2 days, then he'll be ready to work. And this is not a Melvin Gordon situation. I don't know who is saying
stupid.
that this is just like the Melvin Gordon situation. It is anything but a Melvin Gordon situation. So Austin Ekeler's situation is unique. It's sensitive, but it's for a guy who has earned it. It is a guy who came up as an undrafted free agent, made himself
homegrown
starting running back. Yeah. So it'll be bittersweet if it does end up going elsewhere, but welcome him with open arms if he ends up coming back.
Nobody should be upset if Ekeler remains a Charger. Like that's a non-narrative. I said this earlier on Twitter, Jake, and I could repeat it here for folks who don't follow me or aren't on Twitter, which honestly these days is probably for the better that you're not, because Twitter could be toxic.
Really? I never heard that.
There is this chasm. There's this chasm of Chargers between two sets of Chargers fans regarding Austin Ekeler. There's one side who focuses on, the catches and the production and the touchdowns in the last 2 years and the volume and the kind of the lifeline that he brings this Chargers offense, which is true. Then there's the other side who look at Austin Ekeler and say, well, he's not really a real running back one. Like, he doesn't rush the ball well. He can be stopped. He's not really an in-between tackles kind of guy. And the Chargers suck at running the ball, and they need to be able to, help Herbert with that. And also true.
Let me just ask
now,
this.
Is that his fault?
Well, that was going to be my point. In the last 3 years, how has the Chargers offensive line been?
Fair.
I'll wait.
No, fair. So totally fair. But I'm saying that's the two sides where one side is like, we can't let him go. The other side is like, he's replaceable. And in my eyes, I think the thing that people need to realize is looking at him as a running back, I think is sort of unfair, but that's what his role is. But if you think of him as an offensive weapon, it is hard to replicate the production, period. So that's why the Chargers have been out looking for the RB2 to help with that running game that he might not be the best at. So at the end of the day, like, both sides are right. It just depends on what teams and what you value at running back. Like, are you a guy who just looks at, like, is he a good rusher? Is his yards per carry, total yards, rushing touchdowns? Is that what matters? Or is it like the total yards? Is it the all-purpose? Is it receiving touchdowns? Is it catches? There's also the intangibles. We talk about the leadership, him being undrafted by the Chargers. Like, all that stuff comes into play. But at the end of the day, like, it's a very unique situation, which makes the Austin Ekeler contract trade stuff so hard to pinpoint, because there really isn't another running back like him. Like Christian McCaffrey, for example, Alvin Kamara, both of them are, people say he's just like them. They are better in between the tackles than he is, at least so far, regardless of whatever happened. We don't know because of the offensive line, but whatever. Those two are better. So in my eyes, Jake, I think there's a world in which they bring Austin Ekeler back and they bring a running back in. But if it was me, draft excluded, not talking about the draft, I like Isaiah Spiller. He has not gotten enough reps at all. He is super young, but very talented. He was a top 5 running back in last year's draft class. Now, is he Bijan Robinson? Obviously not. But do they need a Bijan Robinson right now as much as they need other positions if Ekeler stays? I don't know. Jake, if there is, let's just go down the route. Let's say Ekeler stays. What type of free agent running backs, if any, are you targeting?
One that comes to mind is who is it? Foreman out of
Jonathan
Carolina.
Foreman.
Thank you. Yeah, with especially with that whole fluctuation to their running back group, they're obviously not bringing him back. So if you wanted to bring someone in to compete with the likes of Kelly and Spiller, that would definitely be a target as far as a number 2.
Okay.
That would probably be the one that and especially with the running backs that have already been taken today, that would be the one as if Ekeler was remaining on this team, if you're not necessarily looking for a quote unquote, starter for your team, he would be the one.
Lucky you, 858. We need a power runner. I mean, I kind of push back on that. Layer Roundtree, power runner. Hold on. Power runner. I'm saying give me 2-3 yards and a first down. Larry Roundtree, power runner. Joshua Kelly, power runner. I would say Isaiah Spiller, power runner. Like, we've seen power runners come and go. Is it the power runner that we need, or is it the scheme/line that has to get fixed?
I mean, look, there was
like
there
could run 2 or 3 yards if the offensive line's good.
There was a reason why LT said in the huddle before he broke the all-time single-season rushing touchdown record that he said to his offensive lineman, come and celebrate with me in the end zone, because he knew that he does not get that without his offensive line. Everybody who's out there saying like, oh, if Ekeler doesn't come back, go out and get Zeke. Let me tell you something. If you put Austin Ekeler behind the Dallas Cowboys offensive line, I guarantee you those numbers are going to jump. If you put Ezekiel Elliott behind the Chargers offensive line last year,
yeah,
what do you think is going to happen?
Yep. Original one comes in and says, how I see it, let's relive the actual game day instead of offseason talk. How bad would Herbert struggle when Allen and Williams were out? Ekeler on game day is so valuable. True. Again, safety valve literally was what was keeping this offense afloat at times with those guys out. So, look, the running back situation, I think, is very fluid, obviously, but I think if you were reading the tea leaves today, I think the chances of Ekeler being on this team in 2023 are higher today than they were yesterday. So we'll have to see how this plays out. For folks in the chat watching live, send us some questions real quick. We probably got another 15 minutes and then we are out of here. So send us your questions or topics you'd like us to discuss in the last 10 minutes or so. We'll try to go rapid fire. Jake, so far, last year, obviously, we saw the Chargers go cray-cray in free agency at the beginning. But then, throughout the offseason, they kind of rounded it out. And you look at some of the guys that they had, obviously the J.C. Jackson is a big TBD. Very unfortunate. Let's call it TBD. Other than him, which free agent did the Chargers bring in that was not like at least a double last year? Morgan Fox, Kyle Van Noy, Bryce Callahan, J.K. Scott, Sebastian Joseph Day,
Austin Johnson.
But again, also kind of a TBD. He was hurt.
Mm-hmm. That might be the next closest one.
Gerald Everett. Like, they hit on a lot. Khalil Mack, obviously. Like, that's what I think builds the roster. And so we'll see what happens. But I think, we're obviously not going to see the J.C. Jackson, Khalil Mack type things. I don't think we're going to see that in terms of big splashes. But I could see medium splashes for sure.
Dan, I'm going to push back on that just a little bit because, and this goes into the whole, I guess you could say whether you believe it's myth or fact or anything
Dicker
like
the
that.
kicker.
True. How could we forget about that one? The whole myth or fact that you don't necessarily build your team through free agency. You use free agency to simply fill holes. Well, obviously the Chargers did a lot to build this team through free agency last year because they had a ridiculous amount of money to do so with it. But, you go back and you just look at the Chargers draft last year. You get Zion Johnson, you supplant your right guard position. Essentially, that could be set for the next decade. You trade away your number 2 pick to go get Khalil Mack. Now, this is where it starts getting dicey. Round 3, the draft pick that all of Chargers faithful always hold their collective breath whenever Tom Telesco sends in that ticket.
I didn't say draft.
I know you didn't, but this is my point.
Okay.
I'm getting to my point. JT Woods taking around 3, Isaiah Spiller taking around 4. Now listen to this. After that, Tito Agbanigba, who up until the point when he got injured, unfortunately, he was a great rotational piece to your defensive line, especially when it came to the run game. Now let's face it. There's a lot of people that were jointly responsible for the Chargers run game being as bad as it was, but he wasn't really one of those reasons. It's at least maybe the smallest reason. Let's be frank about that. Round 6, Dan, Jamari Sawyer, your new starting left guard.
Unsung hero.
Unbelievable value and being able to step in for Rashawn Slater for that duration. Round 6, also you get Jasir Taylor, who the Chargers could be having start in the slot position if they don't bring back Bryce Callahan or they don't supplant that with another free agent. Dean Leonard, who made a couple of contributions on special teams this year, and Xander Horvath, who for some reason started off on fire in the first 2 games of the year, getting in the end zone twice. And then it was like Joe Lombardi just forgot how to use them. I don't know what happened in that regard, but here's my point, Dan. You look at those last, 5 picks that Telesco made last year. Not only are those value depth pieces, they could end up being great starting pieces for you, obviously. It's round 3 and 4 that you just hope you could have had a little bit better in as far as your choices goes. That's just my point, Dan, because you're saying the whole thing about free agency, and I get that. But to me, it's half and half.
I agree. I think they're equal. I'm just saying from a free agency perspective, which is where we're at right now, Chargers, in my eyes, hit like at least a triple last year. And so far, given the money they have, like they've brought 2 of the top 3 priorities to re-sign, to bring back. They brought in support with Eric Kendricks for run support. Like they're tied to John Johnson right now, which we'll see if that actually comes to fruition, but like that would be sweet. Like they're doing pretty good. And so far they've read the market correctly with the guys they let go out and test the market. A question came in here. Let's get a couple questions here in the last 10 minutes or so. Around, they said, put your GM hat on for a second. How do you see the John Johnson contract looking?
Oof. I mean, if you were to make it work based off of the numbers that the Chargers have left as far as spending money goes, again, hopefully you take an advantage of a down year. I would assume that it's probably going to be either a 2 to 3 year deal for him.
Probably 2 years.
Keep that overall cap down. Maybe you can find something maybe between the $4.5 and $6 million range. Maybe that.
You think get him that low?
Well, look, I'm judging off of what they have to spend, what the Chargers have available to spend right now. Not necessarily the market, but I'm saying if he's interested and off of the year that he's had, and obviously if he's not choosing to run with the market and find possibly another better deal, and given what the Chargers have left to spend, that would probably be the neighborhood that I would think that you could get him at.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not going to be easy. I wish I could just snap my fingers and say it's going to be as simple as that, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think Von Bell, I think his average annual value is like 7.5. Juan Thornhill, we just saw, I think he's going to be $7 million per. Obviously, Jesse Bates way higher. Jabril Peppers was $4.5 million. Like I would guess, I'm going to say like given how it's gone so far, I think I'm guessing it's like in the 5.5 to 7.5 maybe or so. And if they can make a signing bonus to where the cap hits low, like, yeah, you'll do it. Thoughts on Adrian Amos? We've seen his name come out here a couple times in the chat. they should sign either John Johnson or Adrian Amos. Are you in on Adrian Amos? Formerly with the Green Bay Packers.
What, like 3 years ago? 4 years ago? I would have said yes.
I liked him there.
Yes. Fantastic. Would have loved him on this team 4 years ago.
Now?
Well, I mean, it was the same reason why the Chargers weren't able to go after John Johnson 2 years ago. It's because they had Nasir Adderley, and that was how they chose to move. And that was obviously the first year of Brandon Staley. And there were a number of different former Rams players that he was trying to get over here, but that just didn't end up coming to fruition.
So we have folks already talking draft talk, which I know you said you want to get to, Jake.
I was literally just about to say, can we spend the last 10 minutes of this show talking draft talk? And it's a perfect transition for what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. Hush, hush, wink, wink.
Special guest alert.
Make sure you have your eyes peeled for that. But yes, let's talk some draft. Let's talk some draft, baby.
So off the clip, we'll ask a question here in the comments. Who do you want the Chargers to draft? Who is your guy? Not necessarily round one. Who is your guy?
My guy.
That you want the Chargers to draft. In the comments, let us know what you think. Again, doesn't have to be round one. It could be a day 3 hidden gem. Who do you want the Chargers to draft this year? Jake, who's your guy right now? We know who my guy is. I don't have to say it. Who's your guy?
Yes, of course. Everybody knows who your guy is, Dan. You know, I'll keep it simple. I'll still even keep it in the first round here. And obviously this is fluid and it's probably still going to remain for this, but things drastically changed after the combine. And after watching some of the bigger name wide receivers either test or how they tested. Not to say that wide receivers that you're still not going to see 3 or 4 wide receivers go in the first round, but I think they're going to start going off the board much later in the first round than what people expected. So I think that the wide receiver class this year got a little bit devalued. Again, this wide receiver class is not like years past where you have the Jamar Chases, the CD Lambs, or especially even like compared to last year, as early as they started flying off the board and all the trade action that was going for that group. So my focus shifted a little bit to edge. And it's hard to argue, and he's probably not going to be there at 21. But just picturing a defense that could have a edge group collectively of Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, and Nolan Smith.
No, you're going Nolan Smith.
Is just ridiculous. And I know he's probably going to be gone way before that. But I started watching Nolan Smith, before the regular season was even over. Went back and watched his tape. And I got so enamored with how he played the game. And then you go out and you watch him at the combine. And you're just like, what in the hell was that? To me, just somebody with his size, with his bend, with his speed, and he is deceptively strong. I don't care how slender you want to say he is. Yeah, he could pack on a little bit more size, but he can move some bodies, man. He can move some bodies. He's strong. So
Speaking of strong, Darnell Washington.
Yeah, bite my tongue on moving bodies and moving sleds. But yeah, it's probably one of my pipe dreams that I had, and no, this is not going to be the pipe dream of Rashawn Slater that ultimately ended up coming to fruition. But Nolan Smith has been so fun to watch on tape, and then to see, especially even today at his pro day, weaving in between in and out of the bags, is fantastic to see. So Nolan Smith has been my guy. Probably not going to end up being a Charger, but he's been my guy.
Adatome Adabaware out of Northwestern.
Dan, have the floor, my friend. Have
Size,
the floor. If Dan's guy is Tank Dell, there's a very good case to be made that Adatome Adabaware is Dan's second guy.
Yep. You're speaking my language, Solo man. If you don't know, you should know. Talk about a hybrid edge interior defensive line who size be damn, like Jake seems to say.
We need to get that shirt made for draft season this year, by the way. We need to tell Ryan about that.
Special. climbing up boards and blew up Senior Bowl. Blew up the Combine and then blew up his pro day. I don't know if folks saw that. Northwestern alum. I'm sure Chris Harry's going to love him. Yeah, like him a lot. A lot of people talk about Dalton Kincaid. People talk about Lucas Van Nest. People talk about... No one actually mentioned Mayer, which I'm actually surprised about. Zach Charbonnet, UCLA owned.
Zach Charbonnet. Ryan got a good couple of minutes to talk about Zach Charbonnet when we were wrapping up the whole Combine coverage. Zach Charbonnet has really impressed. And if the Chargers... I mean, look, if Austin Ekeler ends up remaining with this team, I still believe that the Chargers can reload that running back room. I know that it has not worked out for Tom Telesco the last 3 years. And Larry Roundtree, Joshua Kelly, did elevate a little bit this year. Isaiah Spiller is, as of right now, a bunch of question marks, but there's a lot of potential. It wouldn't surprise me if he swings for it one more time.
I don't know. In my eyes, that's a bad look. Going running back 4 years in a row.
I say it again. It solely matters on if Ekeler remains with this team. Obviously, for everybody who wants to start bringing up the Bijan Robinson conversations, and I myself was one over the last 2 days, but how could you not talk about it with all the trade rumors? The odds for the Chargers to draft Bijan Robinson went up yet again, Dan. They went up to plus 300. They went from plus 700 to plus 300. Yeah. So I still wouldn't put it past him. I still wouldn't put it past him in the later rounds if you try to swing for the fence on another running back again.
I keep saying this. Why the hell are you going to go again in the later rounds when you have Isaiah Spiller, who hasn't even sniffed the field yet, who in my eyes is a damn good prospect? Why? Why? I don't think anyone in day 3 is going to be any better than you're going to get in Isaiah Spiller right now.
So to you, running back class or the running back stable with Austin Ekeler back on this team next year is going to be Ekeler, Spiller, Joshua Kelly. I'm assuming that's what you would be saying.
If it's not those 3, I'm going for a running back who is proven in the NFL, and I'm not drafting one. They have too many needs.
I don't disagree with you there. Okay. I still wouldn't put it past him though.
Right on cue, Marcus comes in.
And if Eckler's not on this team, this is going to flip that whole conversation upside down.
Yes. I would rather assign a veteran. Running backs are cheap, says Marcus. Dan thinks that Ekeler is gone. Dante Foreman, hello. Jake, you talked about him earlier. White Mamba says that we need OL depth before Linsley's needs. Try to say that 5 times fast. I guess question here. Why didn't Spiller even play? Great damn question.
That's a great mystery. It's hard for me to believe that there was a good reason that he didn't play. And not that this is a knock on Larry Roundtree, but even Sony Michel when we had him in there. And we're talking like the midpoint of the season. It was hard for me to believe to think you invest in a 4th round pick and the college career that Isaiah Spiller had, to think that you're not even going to give the Rook a shot, let him tote the rock a few times a game, that he's getting beat out by these other guys. It was really hard for me and a lot of other people to believe that.
I think they did put something on him being the youngest player taken out of the draft last year. And
I mean, sure, but I mean, that's the reason why you're not going to insert him.
They're not saying, "Oh, he's young, I'm not going to play him." But I think him being fresh behind the ears, I don't think helped. And I think the staff probably was more focused on and trusted veterans more than a young rookie. Now, was that the right decision? I guess you can say, I don't see how it could have been any worse. But I don't know. All right, Jake, we got a couple minutes here. Again, tons of people tuning in live. For folks who have not been here the entire time, who just came in, Chargers bring back Morgan Fox on a 2-year deal. I cannot wait to see what the numbers look like. This seems like a coupon Tom extravaganza extraordinaire yet again. I don't know how they did it, Jake. I don't know how they did it, but they did. And they currently, Trey Pipkins, check. Morgan Fox, check. Drew Tranquil, TBD. but they got Eric Kendricks already. So we shall see what transpires. Will John Johnson be the next one? I predict outside of Chargers land. Yes, I think he will. Jake, anything else you want to tell the great friends before we ask one more time for the like and subscribe?
It's been a fun week, my friend. It's been a fun week. It's going to get even better with what we have coming up tomorrow.
I can't wait.
Especially with the last subject matter of what this podcast has been about for the last 10 minutes.
If you if you care about the draft, you damn sure better check in to Chargers Unleashed tomorrow.
This is why I love talking football. This season right here, not free agent frenzy. This season, in what's the midst we're in, 6 weeks from now, the NFL draft. This is why I love talking football. I'll be the geek and I'll just let that out of me right there.
Any hints? Any hints for tomorrow's guest?
No, I'm just going to leave it at that because I feel like if I do any more of a hint, it would probably, there are a bunch of wizards that have always been able to decipher our codes or our subtle messages on Twitter, and they're good at it. So I can't give it any more than that.
Okay. Julian Gonzalez asks Daniel Jeremiah, although he has been on the show, friend of the show.
He has.
It is not Daniel Jeremiah.
It's not. It's not. Maybe that is the only giveaway.
There we go.
That will give.
There we go. Again, for Jake Hefner, Dan Wolkenstein, guys, gals, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been a fun one. We've done live shows or shows the last 3 days in a row. Continues tomorrow, so it'll be 4 days in a row. Jake, this is fun. This is what it's all about. Off-season, draft, free agency, deals. I love this stuff, man. This is like illegal crack.
You mean
I wouldn't know.
Legal crack.
Or legal.
It's just out there. It's free. Just grab it.
Fair enough. Fair. This is like legal crack. There's the quote. Guys, gals, thank you so much for tuning in to Chargers Unleashed. Guys, it's been fun again. Hit that like and subscribe. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, everywhere else. This has been fun. Love these live shows. At the end of the day, we're all in this together. Chargers get Morgan Fox back for 2 years. Trey Pipkin's already back. We'll see what happens with Austin Ekeler, with Drew Tranquill. Rumors about John Johnson. We'll see. We'll talk to you next time on the next Chargers Unleashed.